Ladies and gentlemen, good morning from the ICMPD headquarters in Vienna. My name is Alexander Malev and I'm the project manager in the Prague Process Secretariat at ICMPD. After the summer, I'm very glad to welcome you to our 6th Prague Process webinar. Before introducing my colleagues and our speaker for today, let me remind you that we will have the chat for asking questions. We also have a bilingual webinar today, so I would ask you to please choose your preferred language at the bottom of your screen. You can choose between English and Russian, which will facilitate the audio function of the webinar. I am very glad that we are here with our service providers and interpreters at Basis Production, and would like to already thank them for editing the recording of this webinar, which shall then be made available both in short and long formats on our website. We have launched our webinar series back in April, and I'm glad to have Glen back again. He was our first speaker in April when we started the webinar series in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. This was also communicated as contingency planning of the Lithuanian Vice Minister, since Lithuania is, of course, currently the leading state of the Prague Process. Apart from webinars, we also had our first online training back in June, and we've continued to produce a lot of policy briefs and analytical reports within the Migration Observatory of the Prague Process. Similar to the first webinar held with Glen, this webinar is also accompanying a policy brief that he drafted and that was recently published on our website. And we look forward to also continue this cooperation in the future. I'm very glad to see so many participants from different countries attending our webinars, and hope that you had, in spite of the coronavirus, a good summer. Let me shortly introduce my colleagues. Irina Lusek is project officer at the Prague Process Secretariat, and she will moderate the question and answer session following Glen's presentation. Julia Subotska already facilitated the technicalities of this webinar and is responsible also for any issues you might face during the webinar with technical problems and so on. You can, of course, write this in the chat function. So with this being said, I would like to introduce Glen once more. He has over 20 years of working experience. He is an expert in communications, business development, and also a policy specialist with excellent knowledge of the energy, transport, and technology sectors. But not only that, he also has an overall very good understanding of the EU institutions and decision-making processes, and a very hands-on professional approach. He is a creative writer and quite innovative, and we are very happy that he brings new areas into the Prague Process. His last webinar was on intercorporate transferees, and this time Glen will speak about the platform economy and migration. We might also envisage another piece of work with him on the industrial strategy of the EU and migration, so we look forward to cooperating with him on this. And currently we are also about to publish a paper on the EU's new multi-annual financial framework and its impacts on migration policy across the EU and beyond. Glen has a Master of Arts from the College of Europe in Bruges. He is also the founder and CEO of Free Trade Europa, which is an independent think tank promoting social, economic, and political benefits of openness, liberalization, and free trade for governments, companies, and citizens. He's an author of many articles and commentator and presenter on TV at conferences or also events such as ours. What I can recommend is for you to read his paper. It's available in both English and Russian, and we will send a link to it very soon. after the webinar, as well as also share Glen's presentation with you that you will see in a minute or two. Let me finally also mention that Glen just started a stakeholder initiative on the platform economy, which brings together companies and the public sector actors to address the most important issues faced in this area today. I think Glen will share the link to the website of this new initiative with you. And with this being said, I would like to invite Glen to start his speech. You will soon see his presentation, and we have foreseen for him to speak for about 30 to 40 minutes, and that will leave us with an equal amount of time for question and answers. So we very much hope that you will also ask your questions either in English or Russian through the chat function. And with this being said, Glen, floor is yours, and have a successful webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Alexander. That's very kind of you with the introduction and those kind words as well to present me here and to speak a little bit about the platform economy. It's a word and a term that's used increasingly, but with different meanings for different individuals. Therefore, I'd like to sort of give a little bit of background about what we're talking about, a few definitions, and also some policy options and some of the implications and recommendations that we'll be following too. So we can move on to the next slide, but I think that Alexander has done a far better job than me of actually presenting myself and my background. But it's great to have the opportunity to present here today. And much is really said and written about the platform economy. There's a lot of reports and lots of studies that are highlighting that the majority of jobs will be freelance and platform-based within a few years across the Prague Process region. And in this presentation, we would therefore like to look at the context, some of the policy options, as well as what are the implications of this and what are the potential recommendations that we could provide to this as well. So to begin by looking at what the platform economy is, we should also be underlining that migrants make up a large percentage of the workers in this sector in a lot of countries. Third country nationals cannot get locked in a technology facilitated parallel economy, which leads to unstable incomes, limited training, and social isolation. And the COVID-19 crisis has led to rising unemployment, and the recovery is likely to be characterized by increased labor market flexibility. Significant demand remains in many sectors, both low and high skilled workers. And the platform economy can help in turning black jobs white, bringing them into the regular space, and also integrating migrants into host country labor forces. So work permits should therefore be looked at and granted to migrants where jobs are needed, while efforts should also be made by all stakeholders to build trust in the platform economy through collaboration and the establishment of a code of conduct. And I shall take these points in turn. So Yulia, if we can just go on to the next slide, please. And we can begin with the context and also some background. We should start by specifying what the platform economy is, what the role that is played by digitalization in this, and the increased flexibility that is being demanded by both employers and workers. And we should also look at the result, which is increased instability, and the fact that it is migrants who are most often impacted by this. So to begin by saying a little bit about what the platform economy is, it's first really important to specify that there's a great deal of confusion. And in its broadest term, the platform economy can be defined as economic activity facilitated by technology. Yet, since we have the internet, mobile connections, most jobs today have a digital element. So this can be often a little bit too vague. So to go further, the platform economy can be described as the digital marketplaces and the digital platforms which allow people to buy, sell, and share goods and services. And such platforms link supply and demand. So for example, consumers wanting food delivered to their home or office can be connected with restaurants and delivery drivers via an app and a website connection. And similarly, people wanting their grass cut or their dog walked or a car to drive them on holiday or into town can be connected with people or companies who are willing to supply these services over a platform. And in turn, these platforms like Upwork, Uber, Yandex Taxi, Foodpanda, for example, they take a fee or a share of the money earned in each of these transactions. And research states that the majority of these jobs will be freelance. So in this sense, independent people hired to work for different companies on particular, very concrete, very specialized, specific assignments, and based around platform economy work over the next 10 years. So this means at the same time, the traditional relationship whereby an employer pays an employee an amount of money in exchange for an exclusive agreement to work 9 to 5, 5 days a week. This is changing because both workers and companies are starting to want more flexibility. And this is something that started even before the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course changed the world of work increasingly. Individuals want to have more choice in when to work, where to work, while combining different roles, both in terms of different jobs, but also balancing work and life priorities. And simultaneously, employers, they want to hire the specific skills that they need when they need them, rather than having a sort of a large generalist workforce. And platforms and apps are therefore growing in popularity to bring employers and employees together. This is particularly relevant from a migration perspective, since platforms are increasingly used as a way for migrants to enter the labor market and also broader society. And there is a direct link between the rise of the platform economy and traditional employment becoming kind of more difficult for migrants to enter in destination countries. And this can often, the result of this can be seen in, for example, Polish plumbers and handymen making money through apps in Western Europe, to Uzbeks driving cars for ride-hailing platforms in Russia, for example. So what is the role of digitalization also in all of this? I think it's important to underline that digitalization and globalization are crucial for the platform economy and have contributed to new ways of working and have altered the shape of the labor market. And equally, they have affected how we buy, sell, and share goods. Where we once used to sort of be happy with putting a classified advert in a newspaper or a card in a shop window, we can now reach a much larger audience through digital means. And this is facilitated by the fact of almost 90% of the European Union population have access to the internet, while figures in Russia, it's about 80% and about 75% in Kazakhstan. And people can actually reach this larger audience for a fraction of the price too. Much simpler, much cheaper, much easier. And both new and traditional service providers can use platforms to create fresh demand as well as reach new customers. And most people across the Prague Process region also feel that technology is having a positive impact in this regard. The majority of citizens feel that technology has had an overwhelmingly positive effect on the economy, also on society, and also on the overall quality of their lives. And the platform economy is having this impact on society by affecting the world of work, as well as how we buy, sell things and services. But often the legislation, the rules and practices are struggling to keep up, because often these are geared towards a traditional relationship between an employer and employee, as well as buyers and sellers having a very traditional, very direct relationship. And as a result, current laws can often create barriers and prevent the development of the sector while failing to provide the necessary protection for workers and individuals. So workers in the platform economy can often find themselves, they can also find themselves kind of in a place where they don't maybe have the necessary protection. They maybe don't have the social safety net of a regular job. And platform companies often state that they're not employers. They want to have their hands off this, but rather classify themselves as a technology provider who should not assume any rights or responsibilities towards the platform workers. And I think it's also vital within this that we should think that this is not seen as something that is in some way sort of a lesser grade, and there should be no sort of parallel economy or something shady whereby rules are needed to make sure that people are paying taxes, consumer protection is upheld, and that employment conditions are fair. And in countries where technology usage and digitalization are high, for example, countries like the Nordics or Estonia, adaptations are being made and policy is being updated to meet this new reality. And this takes the form of things like electronic invoicing, declaring tax electronically, and payments being made and allowed over e-platforms, for example. In countries where this is not the case, workers and citizens are at a disadvantage. And simplifications facilitated by technology and digitalization are extremely relevant for migrants, since they often represent the elements of society who are most at risk. And globalization, technology advances, and the shifting norms and values are shaping the way we work. And this kind of task-based employment accessed through websites and apps such as Uber, Bolt, Yandex, Bytaxi, Foodora are used by more and more migrants to earn money. But the platform economy can be a kind of a double-edged sword for many migrants, though. They offer a quick pathway to self-sufficiency, yet come with risks of unstable income, limited training, and social isolation, all of which could hinder the overall integration process in their destination country. So to say a little bit more about this increased flexibility and instability, the two which go hand in hand, a growing number of firms now rely on this pool of external service providers who are available 24/7 to top up either their own workforce or provide a complete workforce at peak periods, or to bring in missing expertise for a limited period of time. And the employment market of today is becoming more and more reliant on these platform economy workers, individuals who rely on internet-enabled platforms to find these one-off tasks too. And this can be everything from translation services to delivering food, and also construction work and ride-hailing services, for example. So also to look at some of the research, around 40% of executives across the Prague Process region expect to employ more freelancers than workers on a fixed term contract over the next 5 years. And furthermore, 50% of business leaders think that the corporate adoption of platforms to find workers would be a good thing. The COVID-19 crisis has reinforced this development. It wouldn't be out of order to say we've almost come 5 years in 5 months in terms of labor market developments. And also within this, kind of 50% of business leaders think that the corporate adoption of platforms to find workers will be a good thing. And really, I think that, the similar change we've seen in previous economic downturns as well. The number of freelancers and the size of the platform economy has increased as a result of every economic crisis since 1991. So if we can change slides there, Julia, and go on to look a little bit more about policy options. It would be good to move from this kind of background that we've provided now to look at some of the options available to governments and decision makers and opinion formers. because integrating migrants and facilitating their entry into employment, in particular, through the platform economy could be an important focus for policymakers across the Prague Process region. Migrants are finding it increasingly difficult to enter these labor markets in destination countries, as we highlighted before, and there is the hope that technology will make it easier for them to find jobs. Technology platforms make it simpler for migrants to be able to match their skills with the shortages that actually exist in the destination countries. And this will help third country nationals already in destination countries. But it should be underlined that would-be migrants need the work permits that will allow them to enter destination countries where labor shortages in specific sectors do actually exist. And as such, the benefits for would-be migrants are more limited, maybe in the short run. But over the longer term, however, technology and platform economy will probably highlight some of the skills shortages more easily, show where these exist. And national governments and destination countries are therefore likely to facilitate migration to meet companies' labor shortfalls, particularly if the local population cannot or does not want to fill these vacancies. And economic growth will depend on increased migration under these kind of circumstances. But an enduring problem across the Prague Process region is that employers are looking for specific people with a specific particular background, and this often includes qualifications and training. Employers know that employees who have come through a local or a national system have an education, professional skills, and an all-round experience that they can utilize. So a German manufacturer of automotive parts, for example, knows that what they will get if they employ a German apprentice who has been trained and has gone through the national system when they arrive. However, when a potential employee comes from another country within the European Union or from outside the EU, Serbia, Turkmenistan, for example, and their skills, education, and knowledge are unknown or not recognized in the destination country, then the willingness to offer employment is significantly reduced. And when this is combined with limited language and cultural knowledge, the situation is made worse. And these strict labor laws also make it more difficult for migrants, since employers do not want to be stuck with the wrong worker that they subsequently cannot get rid of in a very strict, very rigid labor market situation, which we see in countries across the Prague Process region. And since the coronavirus pandemic has amplified many of these issues, and the resulting unemployment means that currently there are more workers, both local workers, non-local workers, and third country nationals to choose from. It's kind of that the platform economy should be supported as a legitimate vehicle through which migrants can find sources of income and make money to support themselves and their families. And as we kind of alluded to before, demand is still strong in a number of sectors, including technology services, programming, website development, and e-commerce, engineering, at the high-skilled end of the labor spectrum. And even when we look at the lower skilled jobs, medical support, the care sector, deliveries, these are sectors that are still growing. For example, the demand for food deliveries is set to increase over the next 3 years by at least 15% across the Prague Process region, according to most reports and analysis. So is the platform economy a force for good or a force for bad? Some feel that the platform economy is fantastic because it allows immigrants, whether they're third country nationals or European citizens moving to another member state, to arrive in a country, begin earning money and working almost immediately. But on the other hand, there is a concern held by some that the platform economy leads to more vulnerability, with long hours, no job security, and kind of weak ties to social welfare systems. Currently, platform economy workers often fall outside national laws and social safety nets in many countries because platform economies are not platform economy companies are not classed as employers, and therefore the normal labor market rules do not apply. To give an example, food delivery companies often want platform workers to buy their own bike or buy their own moped, fix their own insurance, and sort out their own taxes. And often companies do not want to bring to help people too much, because by helping with their tax declarations, social security information, sick payments, holiday days, providing training, for example, and clothing, they have a fear that this will make them seen de facto as an employer, and therefore providing services associated with those of an employer. And this kind of creates a catch-22 situation. Classifying many of these platform companies like a Deliveroo or an Uber as employers would also mean them accepting extra costs, and in some cases making their business model unprofitable. But since ride-hailing and delivery companies want to be seen as technology platforms and not an employer, there are a number of gray areas, kind of who's responsible if there is an accident. Is this the platform or the third party who's actually asking for the service over the platform? And also, what happens if the platform worker gets sick? At present, the platform company has no responsibility in many markets. And what about pension contributions? What about severance pay? Again, the platform company has no or very little responsibilities in most cases. So at worst, the platform economy could kind of push migrants further out towards the fringes of society and the fringes of economic activity, and stripped of labor rights and social protection, while unable to gain more skills, locked out of social capital, they would make the ideal scapegoat for social tensions around growing inequalities in society. But at best, of course, the platform economy could help migrants struggling to find a way into the highly regulated world of traditional employment in many destination countries. These migrants could download an app, sign up, answer a few qualification questions, and start accepting jobs almost immediately. And this, of course, would allow them, and also nationals, if they choose, to enjoy flexibility, autonomy, and connect with a transnational client base in some cases, provided, of course, they have the necessary digital and entrepreneurial skills. And this would also mean that they start earning money, and of course do not need to take state benefits or touch any allowances at the same time. So is the platform economy something to be supported then? If we look to the European Union level, look, the European Commission issued a communication back in 2016 called a European Agenda for the Collaborative Economy. This is a term. Collaborative economy is used interchangeably with the platform economy in the context of this communication. And it was seen as a way of looking to offer and use products and services through online platforms, provide new opportunities for everyone, as well as offer more creative and entrepreneurial people the opportunity to develop new business models. And back in 2018, we see the results of a Eurobarometer poll that showed that more than half of all EU citizens knew about the platform and collaborative economy, with 1 in 4 already a user. And we've seen this increase rapidly, particularly with the onset of the coronavirus, where people are more likely and have been more likely to order food out, not take public transport, but maybe sort of order a ride-hailing service or use an electric scooter instead. A lot of these things that have gone up. And popular platforms, we see Uber, Yandex, by taxi across the region, who are doing very well. But it's interesting that among the people who have used this for sort of buying and selling goods, very few have actually used services to offer platforms at the moment. Eurobarometer found that nearly 9 out of 10 people would recommend platforms, but only 6% of Europeans have actually offered services over a platform. And this is again, as we talked about in terms of the background, something that it is increasing and will increase exponentially over the next months and years. It's not at the moment, though, something that's maybe the most natural for people in the Prague Process region. Still at present, most people prefer traditional methods of employment and working for a single employer on a traditional fixed contract basis. But this also shows the potential scope for development and growth. Younger people in particular are much more attracted than older people to the opportunities presented by the platform economy. And this is what we see out of statistics and analysis that's come forward. And even also in a study that shows that Russians born after 1980 value experiences, mobility and self-expression more highly than status and consumption. And this is also reflected in their increased favorability towards accepting platform economy work. And at the same time, we should also underline in the European context that while the platform economy should have encouraged, the European Commission has underlined that the most important issues to focus on market access requirements, consumer protection, liability, trust in the new services, and also labor law and taxation questions. So what are the conditions of the workers in the platform economy? While supportive of the platform economy and the opportunities it creates, many legislators are mindful that with the new forms of work must come modern and improved forms of protection, including for those working via online platforms. And with this in mind, the European Commission is planning to launch a new initiative on improving the working conditions for platform workers specifically. And this was mentioned in the European Commission communication that came out in March, just before the onset of the coronavirus pandemic, in the communication entitled A New Industrial Strategy for Europe. And also many other countries are looking at the platform economy from a similar standpoint, and doing so will have a significant impact on migrants, given their part and their role here. There's also, in parallel to this, we should say that the European Commission has proposed a reform initiative for an EU minimum wage, and the aim is that by 2024, all workers in the EU should be able to earn a fair and adequate wage no matter where they live in the EU. And this is something that will impact the platform economy and migrant workers too. So moving on to look at the role of the platform economy in making black jobs white. At present, there are a number of roles, from kind of cleaning to building work to babysitting, gardening, which are paid with black money and are part of the shadow economy. And this means that workers do not have any social provisions, sick pay, or pension cover. And it also means that money does not enter state budgets to pay for schools and hospitals. And rather than being seen as perpetuating this reality, the companies operating within the platform economy can actually address these concerns. Some countries have already introduced schemes designed to make certain types of jobs, like building and cleaning work, for example, legal, and bring these jobs out of the shadow economy and provide workers with a safety net. Some examples, in Sweden, a person who hires someone to do sort of repairs or cleaning, laundry, may get a tax reduction in the form of a rotarut reduction from the labor costs. And in Belgium, in the regions, individuals can pay for washing, ironing, cleaning services, for example, via titre service, which are subsidized by the government, and provide decent working conditions for employees in the form of holiday pay, social insurance cover, for example. And moreover, activities closely related to the domestic or private sphere were often sort of paid in cash and undeclared, but the marketization of such work through digital marketplaces, however, means much more traceability, because digital platforms are often facilitated by electronic payment systems, and this increases the opportunity to bring undeclared work out of the the shadow economy and make sure there's much more of a record of what's actually taking place. But will the current climate in the COVID-19 world mean that there will be a push to reduce or stop migration? Because kind of at the other end of the spectrum to facilitating the platform economy is the option available to politicians and decision makers to decide that COVID-19 has created such instability and unemployment locally that all immigration should be reduced or stopped completely. And while this will be limiting for countries really on economic, social and political grounds, it is a view that is growing in popularity in many quarters, and some feel that since there are huge numbers of high-skilled and low-skilled workers looking for jobs, then locals should be prioritized. So it's kind of a situation that the migrants being an integral part of economic growth in the good times are now seen as an inconvenient problem for many destination and also transit countries. So the coronavirus crisis has made it very easy as well for countries to close borders and stop movements. And this trend could be extended well beyond the life of the current pandemic. Could also see politicians and companies focusing on employing nationals, investing more in training schemes for nationals, but also at the same time investing more in machines, automation to carry out low-skilled jobs over the medium term. So, Julia, if we can move on to the next slide to say a little bit about implications and some policy recommendations. While the situation is evolving all the time and it's expanding at a significant rate, we see that annual growth rates stand at 20% in Europe at the moment. And the platform economy is expected to be worth over $330 billion by 2025. And because of this, it's therefore advisable for governments to control it, utilize it, and kind of grasp the platform economy as a catalyst for opportunity, an opportunity for jobs and also growth. And in times of economic instability following the COVID-19 pandemic, the platform economy should be harnessed as part of the solution rather than being demonized as part of the problem. So what policies can promote the platform economy but ensure that it benefits the wider society as well as the migrants themselves? We would suggest providing work permits to migrants, ensuring that the same rules apply to platform economy as well as the regular economy, and also promoting initiatives to build trust. So I'll just say a few words about these ones in turn, beginning with the provision of work permits and also a safety net, because governments should ensure that migrants kind of receive work permits with minimal red tape where there is a need, and allow them to work in the platform economy in destination countries. And this should apply to third country nationals and apply to permit them to work in the platform economy while meeting the needs of employers and the local labor and business market. And these work permits should be not based on a system of quotas, but rather on the economic need in the relevant country. And although politically sensitive in many countries, offering unemployment insurance for migrants would be helpful. And this would allow migrants to cover very basic living costs if they're between jobs. And in addition, guaranteeing access to healthcare and education, which is seen as being critical to allowing migrant parents to work while their children are taken care of, fed, and enter into the education system. A common concern expressed across the Prague Process region is that new opportunities for migrants necessarily mean a negative impact for local workers. And despite the fact that the rhetoric is popular across a number of countries, research actually shows that the evidence of migrants negatively affecting natives' employment chances is extremely weak. One of the reasons is that foreigners and locals usually bring different skills to the labor market. Migrants can often spot new niches, new opportunities that the established labor market hasn't come across. And in many cases, migrants want or are prepared to do the jobs that the local population don't want to do or are not interested in. So the platforms and the platform economy merely provide the opportunity for workers to find employment more quickly and often more efficiently. Economists and researchers have clearly demonstrated that migrants can provide significant growth opportunities for host countries. And with the platform economy bringing about rapid changes to labor markets, policymakers have an opportunity to think differently in order to take full advantage of these. And secondly, I talked about the fact that the same rules should apply. The platform economy needs to follow the same rules of the game as the regular economy. This entails taking on the same rights, rules, and responsibilities for paying tax, to making social contributions, and providing good employment conditions. Where platforms are providing jobs, supplying uniforms, paying benefits, then they should be classified and treated as an employer. They should not be allowed to hide behind the claim that they're just a technology company, just a facilitator, in an attempt to avoid their responsibilities. However, where platforms are simply providing a digital marketplace, then this functional connection should be seen for what it is. But countries need to be firm and establish that the platform economy needs to be treated in the same way and ensure a level playing field for employers and employees. And also to get rid of this uncertainty, because it's often migrants who are put in these precarious or negative situations. And thirdly, there's the importance to build trust in order to address the knowledge, trust, and perception deficit which currently exists in many countries today about the platform economy. It will be important for the legitimate actors in the sector to cooperate with national public authorities, tax authority, employment agency, trade unions, as well as politicians at the local and national levels. And together they should develop codes of conduct covering the workers' rights and working conditions, as well as taxation and administrative matters. And this is something that needs to be done in collaboration. Such a charter could be tailored to the needs of the national market and kind of be acting as a trust mark for people to meet the required standards. And this would increase migrants' trust in the platform economy, as well as the businesses and consumers in the local market. So it's good for business by building this trust and making steps to make this happen. And information and training sessions could also be arranged in order to help educate migrant workers as well as employees. And of course, this code of conduct needs to be independently audited on a regular basis to ensure and inspire confidence by all respected parties. And operators who do not meet the desired standards should be sanctioned and even have their accreditation removed and be barred from the scheme if they fail to address shortcomings within a appropriate time frame. So that's a little bit about some of the three areas we think could be important to look at. And to really sort of summarize, the platform economy offers these new routes for migrants to enter labor markets in destination countries, while also lowering the barriers to entry and offering them more flexibility. And this is something that should be facilitated by governments and policymakers, since there is a need and demand which will likely increase after the COVID-19 crisis passes, and a crisis which has brought many of these issues into the fore much more quickly than maybe that would have happened normally. And at the same time, legislators need to ensure that migrants are protected from a precarious existence characterized by limited rights, volatile incomes, and no social security or safety net. If not, migrants will remain on the fringes of society with little chance of entering the regular economy. And this is something that all different stakeholders need to work towards to avoid. So I have just about kept to my time. Thank you for listening. And I really invite your questions, clarifications, and even comments and statements as well. So please feel free to ask what you want, and it will be Irina will be facilitating this part of the discussion.
So hello, maybe Alex would first say a few words before we start with our question and answer session.
Thank you, Glenn. I think this has been a very comprehensive analysis of all the issues related to the platform economy and migration, of course. And I see that we already received the first question, but maybe let me start by asking on a concrete and maybe the most famous company that I have in mind, namely Amazon. I don't know whether you followed that there's different conflicts within the company among the workers and employees towards the management, and also the fact that Amazon is slowly introducing drones for close proximity deliveries. So for me as a non-expert to observe these developments within Amazon is interesting, because I see that there's a fight between, so to say, the employees and employer about their rights, about their salaries, about the working conditions, working hours, and the fact that they have to deliver as quick as possible. Yeah. And at the same time, Amazon is probably the most successful and richest company these days, which might also not allow for any competition. So in that sense, is it possible at all to regulate such big companies? Is it possible to compete with them? Is it possible for employees to actually ask for their rights? And will these ever growing players also harm the local economies and maybe completely replace business as we know?
Yeah, it's a great question, a great set of questions there, Alexander. And we see that Amazon and Mr. Bezos have had a very good COVID-19. We see the personal fortune, also the results of the company have done very well, with people not wanting to go to shops. They order things online instead, and this has been sort of very successful from a business model. But at the flip side of the successful business model and securing another generation of the Bezos family is the fact that the people actually doing this in the fulfillment centers, the delivery drivers, who are squeezed on costs and are also squeezed on employment conditions in a lot of cases. And even though there are a number of efficiencies that are created by these large companies, there is real concerns as well. And with all new sectors, new employers, they're constantly changing. But I think this is something that we're going to see over time as well. It's and it's going to be basic competition law, that the monopolistic effect in one market or several markets will not be tolerated. And we see in sort of, certainly in a European context now, the willingness to, and almost the crusade against big tech, normally non-European companies who maybe don't respect the standards, whether it goes from data protection to labor rights and the rest of it. I think this was something that, you know, will be looked at from a regulatory perspective by lawmakers. I also think, and trade union bodies or trade worker representations, I also think it's something that's increasingly going to come from the general population and consumers. We're seeing more of the importance of brands linked to your sustainability, both sustainability in terms of your environmental performance, but also how you treat your workers, how you involve business practices. And if you don't meet the expectations these days, consumers will actually go elsewhere. They will vote with their wallets and purses to say we'll choose something different. There is also the kind of the push against the monopolists, whether it's in a food sector, people turning against supermarkets, wanting to go for some local, the local corner shops or local organic food. I think the same thing will happen with the likes of with Amazon. There will be people who will be using them. There will also be opportunities for more niche players as well, who will provide services on the local market, but also give those specialized delivery options in terms of sales. But at the same time, you raise the issue of delivery channels as well. We're seeing more and more companies and small businesses, SMEs, who are actually using the Amazon network to be able to fulfill, deliver their goods, both through the Amazon channels and local post offices, to be able to fulfill and get their goods to the end consumer. Now that we're having more sales online as opposed to people going into physical shops, so there's a lot that's happening there. So I think there is a role to play for governments, but also consumers in terms of keeping these large companies in check and stop them demonstrating some of the more negative elements of monopolistic behavior.
Thank you very much. I leave the floor to Irina for moderating the Q&A and invite all listeners to please don't be shy and ask their questions through the chat, both in Russian or English.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Alex, for a wonderful question, and of course to Glenn for a great reply. I also agree that customers may actually play a big role here in the platform economy. Whether you demand something, maybe their countries could adjust their policies in a certain way. So the first question comes from Sasha. Thank you, Sasha, for your question. How does platform economy overcome strict national immigration regulation, or could perhaps overcome this? Uber is fine, but the Russian citizen cannot just simply come to Germany and work. That's a reality. So what do you think about it, Glenn? Can you please reply to
Yeah,
Sasha?
absolutely. And the key thing to underline here is we're not advocating irregular channels of migration to fit the need of the platform economy. It needs to be through legal migration, following the specific channels in the destination countries. But I think that what we're saying at the same time, and the case that's brought up here of a Russian worker wanting to start driving for Uber, given the market realities with increasing demand for drivers, not just Uber, it's Bolt and the various other players who exist across the marketplaces. And it can still be the same thing for food delivery, construction, teaching, medical workers. I think it's much more of a need to show via apps very clearly this is the need, and therefore if there's not the supply, then it's the role of governments or authorities to be able to feed that demand. And if the local population, in terms of nationals, third country nationals, that's already there, isn't meeting that need, then hopefully the enlightened self-interest of these destination countries will be to allow more work permits, less red tape to allow this to be able to happen, so that the labor that wants to fulfill these empty positions is allowed to enter those roles and be able to meet the requirements that society, but also the workers themselves, are looking for. So this is hopefully the national element which will adapt to the more obvious need that will be there.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, that's quite an obvious reply to the question. Then we have a question from Vladimir. Thank you very much for your question. He thanks you for the presentation, first of all. And then the question is about the legal peculiarities in terms of a third country national when he's hired by an EU company. How states usually solve such legal puzzles when the revenue services or the tax services, I would assume, sometimes don't have any ties and the information cannot be get about the employer and the employee. How could their states solve it?
Yeah, and this is, again, something that's very different from country to country. Some countries, like where I am in Sweden, every person has a personal number, so like a specific individual registration number. And then you also need a tax number as well before you're allowed to be able to do anything. In some countries, it's much more relaxed. I think one of the element here is that, and this goes into the migration policy, posted workers and seasonal workers legislation as well, allowing specific people in, but to be able to have this cooperation at the national level between different authorities, the tax, the labor, the migration service nationally as well, to have some kind of cooperation. So we know that, you know, you're not spending all your time trying to register in different places. You can go through almost one portal to be able to do this. In certain countries, Finland's a good example that's been looked at. Now there's almost a portal for third country nationals that you can go to one of these services. You can get advice on your rights and responsibilities, but also be able to access all the national authorities that you need to be able to register with in kind of the same process. And I think this bringing the different sectors together is a really, really important part of this, because if not, it almost, even with the best will in the world, for a third country national wanting to do everything right, pay the taxes, register, it's very, very complicated in most European states at the moment. And almost, in some cases, almost impossible not to make mistakes, because you're given a system which is there almost, in the case of migration, its first role and function is to keep people out, as opposed to facilitate and allow you to do things properly. So I think more help, advice and coordination is absolutely crucial to be able to facilitate third country nationals, but also legal migrants to be able to enter the workforce in the proper, easy manner.
All right, there is a small clarification for to the last question. The third country citizen is located abroad and anticipated to work via internet.
Ah, sorry. Yep. Vladimir's good point, and I think this is a really important point you've raised there, Vladimir, because this is hopefully one of the great elements of the platform economy, is the fact that whether you're based in Uzbekistan, Russia, Turkey, you can carry out services, online services for an employer who's sat in Western Europe, Northern Europe, wherever it means. And this is one of the untapped elements of at the moment. So instead of having to physically move, and of course in times of the coronavirus, it's not possible to enter a lot of countries. The fact that if you've got an internet connection and you've got ability to link to some of these platform sites, you can get, be it translation work, programming work, that you can actually do remotely and be paid for it over these platforms as well. So this is one of the real benefits we're seeing, and also something that should be expanding over time, because both the employee, potential employee market, but also the company market, who is really much more open to this now that broadband access is almost universal. And we have the technology to be able to facilitate this. This is something that is growing all the time, and we expect to take off significantly. And again, one of the, if I can say this in an insensitive way, one of the benefits of the corona crisis has been the fact that people are looking at new ways of working, and working remotely has become the normal, as opposed to something that is strange and looked upon as being something new.
I think it's a valid point also for the international companies that we see these days, because many people are spread all over their offices, and you can just see that somebody is sitting in Kiev and working for a company here in Vienna, like many of our colleagues do, for instance. So valid point. And then what would you, because you didn't really reply to Vladimir's in terms of their state response, do they need the states that receive the companies that are, for instance, based in Vienna, would they need to receive the information about their foreign nationals who are working abroad? Would they need to trace them down? Would they need to know about the tax contribution? Would they pay taxes to their national
yes
or rather their economies of their destination, so to say, destination countries where the headquarters?
Exactly, and this is one of the key things as well, is to say that, you know, if you're employing a worker, you're sat in Vienna, you're employing someone in Kiev, then it's important that all the right taxes, social security contributions are accounted for. So you can have, and this again depends on the contract law. If you're saying, well, I'm paying you this amount, it's kind of your responsibility from a employee. Of course, you'll have to look after your own taxes in the same way that if you're you have your own company. I presume this is where it'll be needed to be set up anyway, in either a sort of a public limited company, or you have to have some kind of identity. There's also this rise in a lot of states, this kind of self-employment companies that you can pay a fee to an agency who will allow you to send an invoice. They'll take care of all the taxes, all the social security contributions for you for, say, a fee between 2 and 5% often. So all you do is you receive your money. In some cases, you can receive that money immediately, and the self-employment service will actually look after this with the, you know, the Siemens or the ABB or whoever the company is that is the employer. Locally, they can deal with that. But you need to have, you know, to carry out services, you will need some kind of either a VAT registration or some kind of tax tax entity. You can't just be a sort of an individual, say, I want to work for this person and just give me some money. It needs to be done officially and through official channels and registered in the right way.
Thank you very much, Glenn. I don't see any more questions. Yeah, Vladimir, thanks you for the reply. I actually encourage our listeners to use this time, because we still have another 25 to 30 minutes for the questions. And meanwhile, while we are waiting for the questions, first I ask Alexander if he has another one, or otherwise I would have one.
Oh. Yes, thank you. Just for a pragmatic question from the Prague Process Secretariat's position. You mentioned discrepancies between our different states, for example, mentioning Estonia as one of those front runners regulating this business sector. I therefore wanted to just ask you practically, is there a blueprint or a best practice, a national best practice that we could share among our participating states? Is there one national example that you would recommend to follow? Or is there rather a partial good practice or a specific one in one country and another issue being covered or addressed in the best way in another country? Because of course for us it would be important to keep this in mind also for our future cooperation. Labor migration is of course one of our systematic areas, and we try to be aware and up to date when it comes to the issues you just addressed. So from a practical point of view, is there one particular state that we should follow and whose approach we should try to promote within the Prague Process region? Yeah,
it's a great question. I wish I had a simple answer to you on that one, Alexander. I think there are good examples of the countries that are more digitally aware. There's a lot of great startups and platforms that are coming up in I think all across the Prague Process region. There is no, and I like the way the UK is working with the sort of the private sector as well to actually create the rules, responsibilities, and the framework, which is something that is very important within this overall setup. But then again, we have there's the freer countries like the UK. Germany is doing a lot of good things, but also it's got the collective agreements and the collective bargaining, which creates, like you have in Austria there as well, here in Sweden, which creates very, very strict sectors, very, very strict opportunities for who can work, what an employer is able to do, the amount of money they can charge. This creates a very, very strict element, which is not very conducive towards the platform economy and allowing the benefits and best benefits being able to be realized. So there is no best practice, but there are certain pieces that I can actually share with you that can be sent with the states that I think are good from certain countries. And from a personal perspective, being a platform economy worker myself, not just talking about these things but living this, and also the link that I sent across here in Sweden, setting together this stakeholder initiative with the public and private sector to work about on the fact that, you know, this is real, this is now, this is going to get bigger and bigger. Let's harness it and work with the unions, the tax authorities and the companies to work on definitions, but also how to actually regulate and facilitate this sector as it grows, because it's going to happen anyway. Might as well take advantage of it.
Thank you, Glenn. So we got another question from Yelena Sadovskaya, one of our old and good friends. Thank you, Yelena, for your question. She mentioned that you are actually in your presentation touched upon an access to skills for migrants, this issue. What will be your recommendation for the host countries on elaboration of concrete mechanisms for providing this access to migrants? Do you have any concrete formats for cooperation of the host and origin countries to ensure that migrants actually acquire knowledge and skills needed in the labor market of the host country?
Yeah, I think one good example, and this, you know, all credit to the ICMPD as well, facilitating these migrant resource centers. So people before, you know, who have moved, but before they actually move, giving them information, access to information, training about, you know, what is the sector itself, what should they be doing, also some of the do's and don'ts, what to be careful of, and this is the broad level. Human trafficking, smuggling, all these kind of things, people promising you things that are too good to be true. But at the same time, being able to think about what are the practical examples that you can do and what you need to be thinking of. That's really good. I think also from the destination countries perspective, in terms of facilitation, more information on what it means. So if I'm coming from Tajikistan tomorrow to work in Paris, what are the things that I need to be able to know? What do I need to be aware of in terms of my rights, but also my responsibilities in terms of registration? So you can also sort out the administrative and the practical pieces as well. So you can prepare that in advance. That will be really, really useful in terms of creating education and creating a knowledge of what exists already. So I think that's an important part of this. I think also for for destination countries, the ability to provide language and cultural training as well, I think is something that the statistics have shown is very, very useful in terms of accelerating the integration process and allowing people to be able to get in. This is a free of charge service for migrants to be able to access, to be able to integrate and really participate in society in a very real and concrete way.
Thank you, Glenn. Yeah, I think it's a good example where all this one-stop shop things that are offered in the destination countries already help a lot to facilitate migration, and then explain certain things where you can acquire skills, what skills are needed, what do you need to do before you leave the country. Yeah,
but you say that exactly, Irina, there. It's a one-stop shop. So it's not go to migration authority, go to the tax authority, and they don't speak to each other. You want sort of an interface that can give you this knowledge and that can make it easier for everyone and stop unnecessary problems and unnecessary issues. And this even goes to the element of signing on for a labour migration for some kind of application as well, to avoid legitimate people. And this supports companies who want, for example, I want this dedicated computer programmer, I need them, or an engineer with specific skills that they can find in Russia, to avoid unnecessary mistakes that applications can get rejected on small administrative errors, these kind of things as well. So it should be more of a facilitation process and a dialogue as opposed to a box ticking exercise.
That's true. Usually it's a very cumbersome exercise to find where you need to go, where you need to register, where you can do this,
Yeah.
that, and that. So you always end up in a shadow economy, or very often.
Yes.
So Vladimir kind of has offered a sort of a clarification question to this topic. Does it mean that recruiting agencies play the most significant role by connecting employers and employees? Probably there is a need for the international certified recruiting agencies when the main principles of certifying are defined. What do you think about this entity?
I think international certification is very, very important, or at least national certification. So if you're going to work in Austria, there is a body that is certified that this agent or matchmaking company is what it says it is, and is not some kind of front organization to capture sensitive and vulnerable people and trap them in a situation that we see a lot. Maybe less so in the Prague Process region, but if we move further afield, there is a lot of these third-party individuals who make a lot of money by exploiting the need of people to move, to find employment opportunities in other countries, promising them a lot of things, and then giving them either a slave labor situation or worse. So yeah, some kind of accreditation that will be important, and this is what I like to speak about in terms of the code of conduct as well. That at the national level, companies working with any of these, whether it's recruitment companies or placement companies, they need to meet certain standards, and they need to be audited, and it linked to the public sector as well, to avoid exploitation and terrible situations for migrants, potential migrants.
Okay, thank you. So we have one question from Alejandra Garcia. Thank you, Alejandra. She asks about their trust and traceability. How do you think the states could overcome or help migrants who are usually not really willing to get out of the shadow economy or get somewhere there on the radar? How do they help them, or how they could help them?
I think one of the levels here, Alejandra, is to be able to, as we talked about, make things simpler. I think a lot of people, as we've just been talking about, are in the shadow economy or not fully regular in terms of their paperwork and administration because it's so complicated and they don't know what to do. So I think this simplification would really help like that. And I think the platforms need to be a simple and an efficient way of connecting labor with jobs, but it's not the only route. Finding your own labor opportunities, using your own contact network, well, I think will be equally important. But the platform way should be an opportunity that is seen as something regular, something that is dedicated towards being able to move these services forward, and be seen as something that's regular, so that you know that if you go through a platform, you'll be able to have support with your taxes, social security, and all these elements as well will be kind of taken care of, and something you don't need to you don't need to worry about, not to be concerned about in the first instance.
Yeah, the simpler the better. I agree. I totally agree. Then Yelena has a good question about the trade unions. What role would you see for the social partners like trade unions in ensuring the rights of platform workers?
Yeah, and this is something we see at the moment, and there are some trade unions that are already getting onto this. They're actually offering services for platform gig economy workers, freelancers who are being brought in, because at the end of the day, in a lot of countries, we're seeing union membership falling, and therefore the more creative and more developed trade unions are looking for ways to increase and develop their membership base. So that's one element there, and I think there's a lot of collaboration needed with government and the business sector. A lot of these platforms need to work with trade unions as well. And it's not a case of just a collective agreement is the only way to be able to do this, which can, in some cases, hamper the development of the sector. It just needs to be a way of working together to ensure standards, that the rules of the game are followed, and that, people aren't just trying to gain an advantage by offering platform services. At the end of the day, if you can't offer a standard minimum wage, you can't look after your workers and earn a profit, then probably your business model is wrong, to be completely honest about this. You need to meet certain standards and requirements, and this won't be accepted long-term by either workers or the consumer or employer environment as well. This is something that needs to be brought around. So trade unions, they are stronger in some Prague Process countries than others, but a form of organized labor probably has more of a role to play, more of a part to play in some places than others, and it needs to be informed. But like everything, the trade unions need to develop out of a 1930s, 1940s view of the labor market to something that's much more linked to the reality today. So everyone needs to adapt, evolve, and learn.
Thank you. Another question from Elena Sadowska about the vacancies, the databases, this kind of uniform digitalized databases in the host and in the working force in the origin countries, and open access to such data in all countries. Will it be helpful in ensuring a legal migration from one
I think,
to another?
Yeah, and Yelena as well, I think it's important that the more access to information that we have, the demand and supply information, I think is really helpful. So if we see there is a huge demand in Spain for agricultural or medical staff, this shines a light very specifically. There's no guesswork. It shows that this is a need, and therefore this is something that should be met through either traditional employment or through matchmaking platform economy companies to match the demand with the supply. So I think that's something that's that's crucial. There are employment services who have tried to do this kind of open access database of vacancies. Let's be honest, the ones that I've seen with very, very minimal success. This needs to be something that's looked at and controlled and is valuable. Most of the databases that exist today aren't worth anything in terms of the value of the information that they provide.
Thank you. I also have heard many policy recommendations in a similar way, because many migrants require this one internet resource where they would find all the information, perhaps even in their national language, about the vacancies available, about the legal opportunities, regulations, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Now, that was one of the last questions. I don't see any other questions. I have a sort of a weird question to you, Glen.
Give me a weird question, Irina.
Do you think that education, that our future generations would change their mentality and would adopt easier to the platform economy and to the idea of freelance work? And can the education already now address this somehow, to change this, to change the focus, to refocus our future generations, our future employees to work in this open space rather than a closed, regularized that you have to tied up by the contract and you're not free to leave your employer whatsoever?
100%. I think the answer to that is a great question, and the answer is absolutely. We need to be teaching people to have flexibility, skills, the whole idea of a 9-to-5 job that you start and you work till you're 60, 65 and get a gold watch after all your service. That's gone and it's not coming back. We need to have the flexibility in terms of learning new skills, and all the reports saying that 30-40% of jobs that exist today will disappear within the next 20 years. So this flexibility, looking for new opportunities and staying fresh, lifelong learning as part of a lifestyle, a career in the labor force is absolutely crucial to this. And I think that, to have value beyond a certain number of years is crucial to be able to invest in yourself as an individual, but also look towards the way the labor market is moving. We're seeing that there is automation is for some people a threat. Low skilled, repetitive, dangerous jobs. they'll probably be done with machines sooner rather than later. Even we talk about the platform economy facilitating food delivery and driving cars. Well, a lot of the big companies are already looking at self-driving cars and new. Alexander, at the beginning of this webinar, was talking about drone deliveries for packages. So there are just a few examples of jobs that are, if they won't disappear, then there's certainly a strong business case to get rid of them. So it's up to individuals to stay educated themselves, but also for the education systems to be able to adapt to the new reality and equip individuals and citizens with the knowledge, expertise, and the abilities to be able to navigate the new normal, which is going to be a much more short-term, much more limited way of working in the labour market in one level, but also with so many more opportunities to have certain parallel jobs that you can carry out at the same time, to gain money from various different places. The future is really, really open, and I think that the younger generation, and I'm talking about sort of from the 16 to 30, already see this as a reality. They don't see as the sort of the work-life balance as being going to an office anymore. There's much more opportunity for this flexibility and gaining more satisfaction from this kind of work as well. So I think that the opportunities are there, and I think the mentality of the younger generation is already there in terms of accepting this.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So Yelena actually agreed to your reply. She did a similar comment. And then we have one more question. I would say that that would be the last one. I'm not quite sure what our listener Talai wants to ask specifically, but it matters. It concerns the shadow economy, since the coronavirus actually reduced migration to any destination countries considerably. What do you think about the shadow economy in Europe in this sense? I would assume she means the growth of the shadow economy. Did you notice anything in this particular field?
Yeah, both the regular economy and the shadow economy has gone up. I mean, in terms of people who have maybe been sort of laid off, lost their jobs from traditional employment because of the coronavirus, or people who were on furloughed contracts, they were forced to leave the office or their workplace. We see people actually sort of taking on new sidelines, new roles, new opportunities within the labour market. We can, whether we class it as shadow economy in terms of illegal not paying taxes, or people who are taking on a separate income because that they've lost their primary source of money, or their primary source of income has been reduced due to furloughing or government restrictions. So there's definitely been an expansion of that. And one of the key roles of regulation and the legal framework is to bring this on board, so that it's not seen as the shadow economy. It doesn't have to be the shadow economy. It's another option and another facet of the regular economy, and the same rules should be able to apply. And on the back of that, one of the things we've seen, and one of the big hindrances to the platform economy and for migrants at the moment, that if you're working for Uber or one of these kind of organizations, banks will not give you a loan to buy a car or a house or these kind of things. Your money is very up and down. It's not a specific income every month. And the way in which the system is built in terms of loans, banks, getting banking services, they are demanding, the kind of traditional elements of set salary. What are you getting? What can we give you? And this is also something from a financial services perspective needs to adapt to allow people working in the platform economy to be able to enter and be seen as a regular element of society, and not something that's shadowy and therefore kind of inferior to everyone else. And this is something that needs to change.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that was our last question. So we did really well and right on time. I welcome Alexander back.
Thank you. Thank you, Irina, and also to all participants for their questions. I think the answers of Glen were even more impressive than his initial presentation. Glen, I don't know how you managed to answer that quickly and comprehensively. With this being said, I promise once more that we will share Glen's presentation with you soon, and we will also welcome you to visit our website and download his paper, which summarizes quite well what he presented today. We're very grateful to you, Glen. And let me also just point out our next webinar, which will take place in 2 weeks. The invitations will be sent out hopefully still this week. And it will be about the EU's legal migration policies and the 2018 fitness check of the legal migration legislation. This webinar will be held by Ms. Monica Alfaro Murcia, who is an employee of the Director General for Migration and Home Affairs at the European Commission. So we are very glad to have her in 2 weeks and for her to deliver an overview of the lessons learned from the fitness check and also the remaining challenges, specifically also in times of the Corona crisis. A topic not too far off the one that Glen assessed today. Legal migration, of course, is a big issue these days, and the Prague Process is looking into this. We will also continue to publish new policy briefs and analytical reports. You will also all receive our newsletter in about a month, and one of our upcoming publications is, of course, the one of Glen on the multi-annual financial framework and its impact on migration policies across the EU and beyond. With this being said, I wish you a wonderful day, have a good lunch, and thank you all, especially also for to our interpreters and service providers in Basis Production. And we will, of course, inform you when the video of this webinar is on our website, which will take a couple of weeks, I suppose. Thank you all, and greetings from Vienna. Goodbye. And I'm very sorry, I forgot the poll. At the end of our webinars, we also ask participants to express how they saw and felt about this webinar. So please take another minute to fill out the poll, which just appeared on the screen. Sorry to have forgotten that, and thank you once again. Goodbye.